Good evening to everyone. I'd like to thank all for taking the time for being here tonight. Notice is hereby given of a workshop of the Board of Directors of the District to be held at 105 Port Road, Port Isabel, Texas, on the 20th day of November 2019 at the hour of 5:30 p.m. for consideration of the business of the agenda below. This notice is posted at the office of the district on November 15th, 2019 at 2 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551-041-551-050. We do have the presence of a quorum. All board members are present as requested and posted by law. If I may please have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings and the mercy that you have shown us. Lord, we ask for your continued guidance as we go through the projects that will be presented for a future bond election, and that you guide the bond committee who has committed to carry on to the community the needs of the water district so that they may continue to provide the services to our customers. Lord, we ask that you bless and protect everyone here, especially through the Thanksgiving season that is forthcoming, and keep us safe as many will travel to share this day of peace with their loved ones. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Moving on to item number 3, presentation by Freese and Nichols. Consider and discuss the capital projects for the possible May 2020 bond election and future revenue notice. Thank you for taking the time to be here and presenting with us.
Good afternoon. I'm Charles Gaturka with Freese and Nichols. I'm accompanied by Jackie McMahon. She's our Assistant Project Manager for the Capital Improvements Program, as well as Ray Longoria. We're excited to be here. It's kind of, we build up the evaluation and we do our engineering evaluations, and now we're kind of at the end where we're presenting our findings, so we're definitely excited to be here. As always, we're here to support the district, so if there's any questions during the presentation, please feel free to interrupt. We're here to answer questions. So we'll get started. So we identified 6 capital improvement projects. We'll go through each one individually and kind of discuss an overview of each project. I understand that y'all have already been through quite a bit of them in some detail, and so I don't want to misuse anybody's time by going into too much detail, so this can be high level. But again, if we need to dive into any specific item within that project, just speak up and we'll work to answer those questions as mentioned. So we looked at the 6 capital improvement projects. We kind of divided them up into 2 different funds. One is for the tax bond funds, and one is for the revenue funded projects. And Eddie had kind of looked at it as, from an accounting standpoint, that the tax bond funded projects needed to be projects that were to meet future growth, meet future demand out to the term of the loan or of the bond itself. And then the revenue funded operation and maintenance projects were projects that weren't so much for growth, but actually improving existing facilities and existing part of the system. So what we identified is the 3 projects for the tax bonded funded project is the water treatment plant number 1 improvements, elevated storage tank improvements, and then upsizing an existing smaller water line on Laguna Boulevard. On the revenue funded operation and maintenance projects, we have the SH100 gravity main improvements, the lift station rehabilitation improvements, which is pretty much an extension of what we're doing already with the Texas Water Development Board funds, but it's the lift stations that we weren't able to fit into that fund. And then also improvements at the Isla wastewater treatment plant. Jumping in on the tax bond projects again. Project number 1, we said the water treatment plant number 1 improvements, which also includes improvements for the well water pump station at water plant number 2. Looking at a project total of right at $22 million. For the elevated storage tank project, we're looking at $3.5 million. And then for the Laguna Boulevard, we're looking at 1.3 million. So for the tax bond projects, we're looking right at 27 million with a repayment term of 30 years. Would it be good if we put the lights down to where they can see that?
Yes.
Thanks, Norm.
Very good. Okay. On the water plant, water treatment plant number 1 improvements, as mentioned, that right now water plant number 2 is your sole source of water coming into the district, and by water treatment plant number 1 is currently not in use. So the proposed improvements at water treatment number 1 would be rehabilitating some of the existing structures that can be rehabilitated, but also improving it with microfiltration. Right now it has sand filtration, and we'll explain that a little bit in a little bit more detail. But right now you have sand filtration, and we want to upgrade it to microfiltration, which would match what you have at water plant number 2. So if right now we cut on water treatment plant number 1 with the existing facilities, there would be a noticeable taste and odor difference in your water. So we're trying to bring it up to the same standard as water plant number 2. This would also increase resiliency of your system. If you wanted to look at it this way,
The pointer is going to be in the center.
Center, got it. Okay. So right now, you have water treatment plant number 2 out here at Laguna Vista, right? So water has to be pumped all the way into Laguna Heights, Port Isabel, and into the Ida. Your single point is this pipeline coming in between that's going to be your critical infrastructure. If anything happens to those water lines, then water stops. So if we had a break, say right here in Laguna Heights, we can only pump water in this area here. Everybody to the right is out of water. Once you run out of water in your tanks, there's no more water coming in. So by putting water treatment plant number 1 into service, what we're able to do is if there is a break here, we can pump water in both directions. So we're adding some resiliency in your system if there is an issue with that main pipeline between water plant number 1 or water plant number 2 and the rest of y'all's area. So a lot of benefits on that resiliency standpoint.
Resiliency and redundancy.
And
because
redundancy.
If number 2 went down, number 1 can take it
Correct.
off.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we're proposing, this is the water plant number 1 site. Can you still see Houston? But so this is your existing water plant. You have existing storage tanks that are in pretty poor condition. We'll be taking those out of service. Those are steel ground storage tanks. We're proposing to come back with a concrete ground storage tank, which has a lower maintenance cost. We'll be rehabilitating the existing clarifiers. The concrete structures are still good, so we want to take advantage of that. But the metal structure parts of the moving parts and the mechanical parts is what's kind of worn out. So that's what we need to rehabilitate. We'll be adding a microfiltration, which is similar to what you have at water plant number 2. And also, you'll notice right here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, is kind of the proposed location for the new elevated storage tank that's being proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions about?
What's the estimated cost on, when I say estimated cost on the microfiltration?
So just the microfiltration, so the entire improvement project is right at 22 million. If we pull the microfiltration out, it's about 11 million. So it's a huge component.
Is
but
it
it's the
very
biggest
similar
component.
or identical to what we have? Or?
More or less identical, yes, sir.
Okay.
Down the road, desalinization, or however you say that word, becomes a realistic financial, opportunity for us. Are we going to be able to take any measures in this project to?
Desalination's
Thank you.
totally different.
It
It's
is.
a totally different animal.
Is there any components that would help us
Right.
in transitioning to that, if we could ever afford to do that, if it ever made sense? Or is
Yes.
that even a
Yes,
question that's appropriate?
Right. Yeah, everything that's happening here, because you will have to when you take your desal, you'll blend it with your raw water, so a lot of this is still going to be usable. And what we discussed with Charles is if the bond passes, whoever the engineer y'all select to help you with the project, what we recommend is trying to do some sort of master plan layout rather than, this is the way we showed it with the membranes, but if you wanted to go direct potable reuse and pull water from this right here is your Port Isabel wastewater treatment plant. So if you want to do direct potable water reuse, making sure that they maybe have a preliminary layout, a master plan layout, where those existing facilities is that would allow you to do that.
Okay.
So, yeah, it wouldn't be wasted if you wasted infrastructure if you went and added desal later.
If they went that direction.
Right.
So I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I did poll the audience, and there was some conversation around that, potentially, if it ever became a viable option.
Right.
And there is room for growth in that property area for adding desalination components.
Perfect. Even with the proposed
Yes.
holding tank, right?
Yes.
But you're saying, Charles, you're saying that when we get to that point, that we need to, if that's what we're thinking, that we need to design it with that in mind.
I would say that you want a master plan, because you can understand what additional treatment you would have to have for desal, and just kind of incorporate that into your master plan of your site. That way we're not putting in a building in a location that's not the best use of that space.
And that's adequate space there to add the additional components needed if that time came?
We haven't looked at that. I wasn't really
Right, no, I understand.
included, but I think it's something that, I think there's a lot of area in that location, not just what y'all have in that site, but I couldn't say unless we really dug into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want you to speak on that.
Yeah. I don't want to commit to something that we haven't looked
Right.
at.
Yeah.
Well, what I can say is that I believe that there's like a 5 acre, there's a 5 acre property there, that there's sufficient room to add a reverse osmosis treatment, which is needed for the desalination.
Okay.
Where's our reservoir for all the water that goes to this one? Does it all come from our main reservoir?
Right, so it's pumped.
Oh, it's
into
right.
This reservoir here. So there's a large reservoir, I think it's what,
It's a 10 million gallon reservoir there.
And it's 75 at water plant.
75 million, yes, at water plant.
Right.
So we fill that one up from our big dog in Laguna Vista?
Yes.
And so in part of that $22 million is actually a rehabilitation or replacement. It's actually a replacement of the pump station that pumps from water plant number 2's reservoir into this reservoir. Because we can rehabilitate this water plant and make it just like water plant number 2 from a water quality standpoint. But still the critical link is that we have to get the water to here.
Right,
And
there's no
that-
resiliency if we don't make sure that we keep that place full of water.
Exactly. And so that's why we included the replacement of that raw water pump station to move water to this facility in that 22 million.
And that size reservoir is adequate for what we're,
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is a 5 MGD plant. That's a 10 million gallon reservoir. So if something happens, you got, in us at peak flow, 2 days of storage on site. So this was actually from the filter manufacturer for the filters that you have at water plant number 2. Just kind of showing the difference of what can be filtered at water plant number 2 here. So this is what the microfiltration will filter out compared to what you have at water plant number 1 right now. So you can see that we can pull out even viruses, oil emissions, bacteria even, whereas with the sand filters you have now, we're just not getting that level of filtration at water plant number 1. That's the whole point of going to the microfiltration. A lot better water flow, which is what your customers are used to.
Is that in my packet?
We added that slide.
No, that was, this slide was after
I'd
the,
like to get a copy of that.
Okay.
okay.
Very good. But yeah.
And the reason I'm one, because most people will be impressed with the
that.
difference in what a sand filter can provide and the microfiltration system. And you, I mean, that's one of the top things you need to be able to, but we can do this, whereas that sand filter is not able to.
Sales tax.
Yeah, I think we added, maybe 3 slides this afternoon that were not here, but we can get you updated. Any other questions on the water tank before I go on? So we prepared a water model and we calibrated the water model by putting pressure gauges throughout y'all's system that measured fluctuations in pressure and flow throughout y'all's system, so we could calibrate a model of y'all's water system. And then based on that, we took a look at what y'all's water storage needs were through 2040, but also what the pressures were, and tried to evaluate what was the optimal amount of water storage that y'all would have. Right now, y'all have 5 elevated storage tanks. What we're proposing is to demolish 2 of them and put 1 larger tank in service. So what we're proposing is to demolish the Laguna Vista elevated storage tank. That's a .08 elevated storage tank. It's a very small elevated storage tank. So it doesn't store a whole lot of water, but it still has a high maintenance cost with repainting and keeping it in service. But it also has some operational challenges because you have such a small amount of water that the elevation in that tank fluctuates rapidly. So you tend to have problems with overflowing the tank or draining the tank too quickly because the pumps, by the time you say, hey, I need water in this tank, the pumps kick on, the tank's already empty. Or by the time the tank is full and you send a signal saying, hey, my tank's full, you don't have time to stop the water and the water's flowing out. So it creates some operational challenges. Now that y'all have grown to a little bit larger system, it's kind of time for that one to come out. The other one is the Port Isabel tank, which is right behind us. That tank is actually in pretty poor condition. It's actually out of service right now because it literally is leaking water. And so we're proposing to go ahead and remove that one from service.
Completely remove it.
Completely remove it. Completely remove it. And then what we go back with is an elevated storage tank, 600,000 gallon elevated storage tank, which will provide y'all storage through 2040. It would be one of the newer style tanks with the composite with the concrete bottom, with the steel tank on top, which is a lower maintenance design compared to the leg tanks that we used to see. They still construct them, but it's just not cost effective really.
How tall are they? How tall are they? Same height?
I believe they're going to be the same height, and that's one of the things is that the Laguna Vista tank is actually a little bit lower than some of the other tanks, so it does cause some problems as well. Just because you brought that up, but it'll be a similar height as the one that you're already have.
How do you decide where to put it?
Based on the water model, that's how we decided where to put it. We actually had 2 different locations that we looked at. Both of them were, I think one was in Laguna Heights, is that right? Laguna Vista. And then one right at water plant number 1, which y'all already owning the property was a huge advantage, whereas the one in Laguna Vista property would have to be acquired.
How does your population growth in different areas come into your model?
It's an overall population. Let me say that again.
Let me ask again. Like, does it matter where the population growth occurs when you think about where to put the tank? So, like, let's say all the population growth was going to be at the end of the system in South Padre Island or at the end of the system in Laguna Vista. Does it matter that we're putting the tank in a place where we might not have as much population growth? And that's just conjecture. I don't know what it actually is.
It does get in the way the water model does is that we actually indicate demands in certain areas. And by demand, we say we're going to be using 1,000 gallons per minute at peak flow in this area. And so let's say we had Laguna Vista's tank, which is really small in an area that had a really high demand. Well, it may pull that tank down really quickly. So yes, it does come into play. Having the tank in Port Isabel, where we have a large population, large demand on the island, and Port Isabel that were kind of, it's more of a centralized location. So it does come into play, and it was evaluated specifically in the model based on demand and based on where your not just your demand now, but also where we think growth is going to happen through 24.
Okay. My only concern, the reason I'm asking is, I don't know how much growth you guys model for Laguna Vista, in any parts of it. Just depending on how much happens in the next 25 years, I want to make sure that those people get adequate water pressure.
Yeah, we are pulling out that small tank, but we don't expect that to impact it.
That should help. You seem to think that that'll help getting rid of that.
Right.
Does that location also affect what you refer to in here as the age of the water in the system? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Water age does come into play, and really, the biggest advantage from a storage point of view, water age does come into play, but really, one of the bigger impacts is and we didn't really mention it, but water plant number 1. Putting that into service, so, go back. So when we're talking about water age, it's the point where you chlorinate it to where the point it gets to the end user. And the longer that it takes to get that drop of water from here to the end of the island, or the farthest point of your system, is really kind of what we're looking at. And so by putting water treatment plant number 1 into service, all of a sudden we're putting fresh water a lot closer to the population. And we're kind of dividing it up between the 2 plants, where that's really going to have your best improvement of water age.
I'd like to say that the water tower in Laguna Heights, the 400,000 gallon tank, that's a pretty good sized water tank, and I believe it should supply enough water since the water treatment plant is in Laguna Vista. I think it'll disperse the pressure there first in Laguna Vista, right?
Right.
And then since it's in Laguna Heights, by the time it builds up the pressure or whatever, or fills it up, you have enough pressure in Laguna Vista to take care of that population. That's what I experienced, with that water tower in Laguna Heights. It's a large one.
Yeah, we should see less fluctuations in water pressure with water plant, with the combination of the 2 products of water plant number 1 and the elevated storage tank improvements. You should see less fluctuations in Port Isabel as well as on island, as far as
Should be more
as compared to
constant.
now, where your sole source of pressure is from water plant number 2 right now. So when we put water plant number 1 on, you have 2 sources of pressure that can react to changes in the system. So if you have a high demand, we can get water out of water plant number 1 to the island or Port Isabel a lot quicker. And we're also pushing water back to Laguna Heights and Laguna Vista. So it's going to benefit everybody pressure-wise.
I love the sound of that.
So.
In assessing the storage tanks, did we look at the ones on the island as well? Did we do an assessment on those? On the condition of them, or how much life they have left in them?
We did not. I know that they have to inspect them yearly, and I think that they're going to be due for maybe rehabilitation in a few years. Is that accurate?
Yes.
When were those built?
I'm not sure. No, I don't know offhand.
Early 70s. What was the question? The water tower number 3, the middle one, Huizache, I believe that one came into in the early 80s when they built that water treatment plant in Laguna Vista in 85. That came into effect. But the one in Andy Bowie, that's since the early 70s. I believe.
Yeah, that one probably looks in probably the worst condition.
Right. Yeah. Similar to this one here.
So short of those going down, you're saying that we'll have enough capacity till 2040, but that depends on those 2 being in working condition.
In working conditions.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Back to the location of the proposed storage tank. It's more affordable, my understanding, to put it where we're proposing it, correct?
Correct.
From a land standpoint, from a construction standpoint, from a service standpoint.
Right, and we also have main water lines, large diameter water lines that are coming out of the plant now.
Mhm.
So we don't have to run a long water line to connect to our tank site. Whereas the alternate site, we would have to run, I think, an extra 1,000 feet of, I think, 16-inch or 12-inch water main to the tank site, which would increase the construction costs.
Mhm.
And did we assess those lines as well?
We didn't assess the water lines, no.
Okay.
But just the cost to develop that project for the tank.
Is that something you think we should do, or?
Unless the district is aware of, water main breaks or a condition concern. no.
Yeah, I'm not sure how old those lines are, or, and I know the plant's been down for, what, 11 years is what I heard?
Water plant line?
Water plant one?
Yeah.
No, it's been
Are
down
those lines,
since
I guess my question is, are those lines usable?
3 years.
Those lines are usable, yes.
Yeah.
We've never had any, any issues of line breaks in that area.
And I guess the reason I'm asking is because we haven't used them, so we really don't know what kind of condition they're in.
The lines are gonna be used, we're just not pushing water out of that water plant, but it's all interconnected where the line, like the water plant itself is gonna have water because it's water plant number 2. So most of those lines are gonna be.
So they're
filled with
being
water.
used right now, but we haven't
Yeah.
experienced any water line breaks that we'd say like we're concerned about it.
So there's no buildup of algae or any other,
No, not,
No.
no.
okay.
All right, you're back on.
All right,
You're doing a great job.
all right. Any more questions? Okay. All right, let's see where we were. Any other questions on the elevated storage tank project? Okay. The third project that will be included in the bond program is upsizing a 2-inch line that's currently on Laguna Boulevard. We're proposing to upgrade it to a 6-inch line, so you can think of a 2-inch line and how much water we can push through a 6-inch line to increase the pressure, but also flow in that area. The reason that we're kind of pushing this project to the forefront is that the city is going to be reconstructing Laguna Boulevard. And so we want to take advantage of them paying for the paving and get our water lines in ahead of them. And so the district's not going to have to pay for that paving in the future, or if we have an old water line under new paving, nobody likes to see new paving being dug up to fix a water line leak. And so that's the advantage that we're trying to time by upgrading that 6-inch loop on Laguna Boulevard. So the other part of this project is that currently this line right here is the causeway coming across. This is kind of like the single point of water moving north on the island. So right now, the district is aware of some broken valves on that line, which doesn't allow them to shut down that line. And if there is a break, pretty much everybody north doesn't have water. So what we're proposing is to construct a bypass line, which will give us a redundant line, but also enable us to fix the valves on that line, on the existing line. So that's what we're trying to work on as part of this project here.
What's our cost on that?
It was, I think, 1.3 million. 1.3 million.
Reiterate the importance of that again.
So if, right now we have an existing water line here. It's a existing 16-inch water line. If that line breaks, and they have had some challenges with it in the past, and there are valves on it that are broken and they can't isolate it,
Can't isolate it because there's valves
that are broken.
multiple.
Right.
We probably might not even identified all of them.
Possibly. There possibly could be valves that we don't know about, but part of the project, so what we want to do is install that bypass line, which gives us a redundant feed to the rest of the island. If that line goes out, the rest of the line is out of water.
Which has happened quite several times in the last couple of year and a half.
How long
When it's
is,
happened, is it always right there that it happens?
yeah, how long is that redundant line?
Yeah.
As far as linear footage,
Yeah, that's fine.
How about in terms of percentage of the total island? Like, we're creating a redundancy for how much? Like, This little bit, or the whole, or it's gonna help the whole
Pretty
island,
much everybody north of the causeway.
north of the causeway?
Yeah, I think it happened around spring break, this last spring break, yeah.
Okay.
It's that long blue snaky part I see, all the way up.
So the idea is to tap into the line that comes off the bridge and go under the highway there across to tap into that existing line?
Correct. So we'll be connecting in, I guess it's the bank right here. And so we'll be connecting, just north of the bank to the main system again. And just giving us that redundant feed through that area. 'Cause that's kind of the weak point.
If there's any breaks north of that, sorry, if there's any breaks north of that, our valves north of that bank are appropriately functioning so that we can locate and not cut off to everybody. Is that what we're
And then you
saying?
have loop feeds coming in and out.
I understand
so you can
that.
Isolate areas.
Okay.
Not shut off water for everyone.
Yeah, we can isolate it instead of
Otherwise,
shut
you
it
gotta
off.
shut down the whole island.
I understand.
It's just-
99% of the island.
It's this one area that doesn't have
It's
those.
bad, yeah.
But it's the main part.
Mhm. Okay, I understand that.
Once we have that water line in place, the new one, that'll give us time to repair any valves that are broken in between the causeway all the way to that interconnection there. There
Well,
is a
it's-
few.
Yeah, it's multiple lines. It's two 16-inch and then an 8-inch, and they all just go to one point where this bypass line will get us past that single
Perfect.
point that we really need to do.
We've had
some
3
major
outages in
repairs
that
on.
one area this year alone, that's where they all were.
Mhm.
You
Okay.
can shut the whole island down,
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I didn't realize they were all just right there, I thought.
because that is coming from the main line to South Padre Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's
The
no
next
way to
issue
control
that,
the loop.
At that point, because
That-
there is nothing, it's
It's
just
the
the
main,
one line.
it's just the main.
the next issue that we have there, that's a utility easement. So there's a lot of cables and AT&T or phone lines and fiber optics and all kinds of lines in the same area. They're just going around our line, and we have problems with them too.
Are you trying to say people
Yeah.
complain about not having Wi-Fi?
It takes longer for us to repair it.
Access it, yeah.
So because of that, gotta be very careful when we deal with them back there.
So that's why that was identified as a critical project.
Thank you.
And my understanding is that's only gonna be done in certain sections? It's not gonna be a whole replacement of one single
No.
line?
Yeah. Yeah, so this red circle here, and I forget which road, Jackie. you
That's
know which
Laguna
road?
Boulevard.
Gardenia, I think it starts in
Between,
Gardenia.
Capricorn and Gardenia.
Yeah. So that section and the loop is the only sections that are gonna be replaced?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And then in the future, if the city were to work on another section of roadway, then you would go in and extend those larger lines in that area also.
Right, right. Yeah, this is part of the oversizing of that 2-inch line is part of an overall need, but it can be done in the future. It doesn't have to be done right now.
We just see an opportunity in regards to the savings of money due to the paving that's going to take place.
Yes, sir.
I like it. All right, thank you.
So as mentioned, we're right at 27 million for the total cost for the bond program.
Had a couple $100,000 payment.
Any other questions about the bond projects? Okay. So where we are as far as the overall schedule for the bond program is we're wrapping up the individual reports and finalizing those. We evaluated every project as a separate report and kind of work through it in that way. And then we're going to be finalizing the bond engineering report, which would go to the board for review and approval, which has to be done before February 14th. That's a state requirement, is that right, Eddie?
Yes. Yes.
So we need to have all the projects kind of settled in and the bond engineering report completed and ready for y'all's approval by February 14th.
That's the deadline.
That's the
So we
deadline.
should-
So we'll have it the first meeting in February? We'll have,
Hopefully way before
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sooner the better.
we need some time to really, make sure that we're all on board and where it's going.
I would anticipate that we'll probably have that completed in,
Mid-January.
well, probably, I'm hoping by mid-December. We should be able to have that wrapped up, and then that gives us January for any final reviews, any final questions, anything we want to change in the document where we have time. We're looking good from the schedule standpoint.
Good.
These items that we've just discussed, they also discussed last night at the bond committee. And I know Rudy is here. Rudy, would you like to say something in regards to what y'all decided last night on the 3 items?
Well, Chairman and members,
Welcome.
thank you. Yeah, we had a committee meeting last night, and we went over and discussed everything that the engineer just spoke to you all about. And in the revenue side, as well as the growth side, the tax bond side. And it was the consensus and the agreement of the committee as a whole. We made a motion, and the motion was called and seconded and approved by the committee to go ahead and recommend to you all, but we weren't supposed to make any recommendations, but anyway, they all agreed to go ahead and go forward with the bond election with the projects as presented and being worked on by engineers. We've had a lot of great input from the committee members. They've all done really good work, and they're all in with this thing. They realize the importance of these improvements for now and then for future growth. So the issues there now is they're getting a lot of questions from residents and ratepayers regarding the bond and the projects and other things like that. But they're well informed, fortunately, thanks to staff, Carlos and Charles and Robert and Eddie and the engineers. They've given us all the information that we've asked, and so the committee members are well informed that they are able to answer questions by the constituency. And also, they spoke about how we're going to not market, but how we're going to move with this thing, and just to put out as much information as possible through social media and visiting the different municipalities and entities in the Laguna Madre area. We are one whole community, once you look at it. And it was a consensus that we had a discussion if you wanted to do, Proposition 1, one particular project, Proposition 2, then we said, no, let's just keep it as one proposition, for you all to keep it as one proposition. Proposition 1, the water plant, and then maybe the water line and the water tank. And then it was decided, no, we'll just do one whole thing. That way, everybody's going to get what we need. The water tower that's needed, the water plant number 1 that needs to be fixed and brought back online and into service and improved, as well as the water line to the island to prevent and avoid hopefully further breaks on there and lack of service to the island. So everybody's going to get what we need for right now, and it's projected to go in the next 20, 30, 40 years from then on. From then, and they were very pleased also on the revenue side, the improvements that's going to happen to the revenue side, so how you all are taking care of that. So
Everyone felt comfortable with the 2 types and the financing of the both projects. There was a comfort level of that.
yeah. And the consensus was that the committee should focus on the tax bond side of it. On the revenue side of the improvements, you all have already taken care of that. You looked at it, you figured out how you're going to pay for it, to make all those improvements, so that's great. They were very pleased with that side. So that now the committee and and the board just have to worry about the tax side, tax bond, and how we're gonna get the ratepayers and the residents to vote on this thing and pass it. So there was some discussion on diesel. You know, because as we all know, the main source of water is the Rio Grande River. And right now there's water in the river, but historically there's been highs and there's been lows as far as the water flow or the availability of water in the river. So there's that money that was approved several years back, $60 million, which is there. Let's just go ahead and leave, for you guys to leave it there. And we discussed with the engineers, when the water plant number 1 is rebooted and brought back, to have some sort of transitional plan, like a master plan, to incorporate the desal. It may be 15 years, 20, whatever, right? But the location is ideal here with the water plant number 1 to gain access to, you know, an abundance of channel water or salt water to go ahead and desal. So, yes, you know, make sure that that is in looking forward to this thing, so that we can guarantee that there's always going to be a source of portable water for the area. But everybody worked really well, and we're very pleased we're going to move forward with this. But thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to compliment Rudy for championing the bond committee, and thank you very much. And Rudy, for those that don't know, has served multiple terms with the Water District and has been very valuable for his years of service. So certainly appreciate his forethought going forward. Thank you.
Very good. If there's no further questions on the bond program, we'll move on to the revenue projects. As mentioned earlier, we have 3 revenue projects that are going to be supposed to be funded by revenue notes. You've got project number 1, which is SH 100 gravity main lift station rehab and improvements to the Isla Blanca wastewater treatment plant. Looking at a total cost of $9 million with a repayment of 15 years.
9 million.
Well, that actually may go down based on it, so we'll discuss that. So the first project is the SH 100 gravity main project. Currently the businesses in red have individual lift stations. Those individual lift stations pump into one of the district's force mains from the lift station. So they're pumping into a pressurized line. This causes some challenges, not just from the district's lift stations, because they have additional flow coming into that, which kind of impacts how much they're pumping out of that lift station. But also, when these businesses, obviously, even though their lift stations are privately maintained, if any valves fail on those lift stations, then that pressurized force main from the district can actually back up and flow out of their lift stations and flood their lift stations. So it's not an ideal situation. Usually we want them to be flowing into a gravity line and not coming into a pressurized line, just with some challenges that it does cause.
Why would it have been set up that way? Is it just oversight?
It's a cheaper way to do things. So we're trying to invest now to something that's going to be a little bit more maintainable, not just for the citizens, for the owners of those businesses, but also for the district. Yeah, it's just an inexpensive way to make something happen, is what I'm saying. So what we're proposing is that we would, let's see, that way, construct a gravity main here to collect the flow, and then we bore under SH 100, and then we construct a gravity line, and we'll direct all those flows to lift station 25. And that would correct the situation where they have to have individual lift stations.
So what happens to those lift stations? They can just shut them down?
They can just shut them down, and they can flow by gravity just like any other
Yeah, the services already go to Highway 100. That's just where all their pump stations are at. And once this main's in place, well, they'll be able to tap into the main.
And I know there's some future development supposed to happen behind there. Is that what we're doing? They're gonna support that in the future?
I don't know, I know we looked at the wastewater model. Jack, do you know if that was incorporated?
No, it wasn't. That project there that's gonna be coming up later in the future, there, we were planning to do a new sewer line in the back of that easement back there.
Okay.
It used to be a railroad tracks going through there, but it's a water line easement. That's where our 24-inch line goes through.
Okay.
There'll be a new gravity line going through there, plus the water's already available there, so
And so that'll flow into that
Lift station.
lift station here at the warehouse.
that's correct.
Right.
The second project is lift station rehabilitation, which is very similar to what we're doing with the Texas Water Development Board funds. These are just projects that didn't fit within that fund amount. So we initially had rehabilitation of 8 lift stations. Based on discussions today, lift station 14 will likely move out of this bond, this fund, and move into the Water Development Board fund. With the proposal, what we did is we evaluated lift station 15, which is the lift station right outside the community center, and we looked at decommissioning that and then reworking some of the existing clay sewer lines that are in that neighborhood, and actually taking flow back to lift station 14, increasing the capacity of lift station 14, and then being able to decommission 15. One less lift station for the district to maintain. Plus, we get to replace some of the existing clay sewer lines. Lift station 14, Mr. Avalos is actually the one that we visited that one time together with Charles, where you can see all the concrete eroded on the inside of the well.
And that's the one that has the old, what is it, asbestos line or something? I remember it was a clay pipe or something.
It's got clay sewer lines coming into it, and that's what we're gonna replace it up to the next upstream manhole, and try to improve that as part of the project. But it also has pumps inside that don't come out with rail systems, and so the operations actually have to get inside that wet well to actually work on the pumps.
Right.
You see, it's an unsafe environment, and that's what we're trying to fix. Lift station 23, you can kind of see the erosion of the concrete due to the corrosive gases. Lift station 19, the junction structure, I know these photos are really, really small, but more or less it's the same thing on every single one of them, where we have concrete that's eroded, that the coating has failed, and so now it's eating the concrete and the structural steel in some locations of the wet wells, but we also have piping that's corroded, and it's more or less time to rehabilitate so we can extend the life. Lift station 33, this is just a small manhole type lift station that, my understanding, has been a real headache for the district to maintain. And so what we're proposing is to construct a gravity main down Bridge Street to lift station 16, and then again decommission that lift station. So one less lift station the district has to maintain. So when I mentioned that cost may come down, it's because we may move 14 out of this project. Project number 3 is the Blanca wastewater treatment plant improvements. I know the TCQ have recently inspected the plant. There were some violations. These improvements would correct those violations, as well as improving some of the operations within the plant. One of them is replacing the headworks and the bar screen. This right here is a bar screen. It has to be manually cleaned. You can see that it's got damage to the screens itself, and also the width does not meet TCQ requirements. The distance between, pretty much the more stuff that can pass through it, the more it gets clogged up and down processes. So we want to take care of that. Improvements to the clarifier. We'll we'll be replacing the RAS pumps, return activated sludge pumps, as well as some airlift pumps. And this is your effluent weir, and that weir is under signal, so it doesn't give you an accurate reading of the flow out of the plant. So that needs to be corrected. And that's just kind of the highlights, but there's other items. So what we'd be proposing is to do something very similar to what y'all recently did at your Port Isabel plant, where this would be a new headwork structure with new screens, automated screens, but also grit removal. Obviously, you'll have a lot of sand in y'all's lines because of the location. What that would do is to remove the grit. You know, anytime you have grit and sand being passed through pumps and downstream processes, it's going to wear out a lot quicker. So they've had a similar grit removal process, just like the Port Isabel improvements that were done. Along with that, you know, any type of improvements that were done there would be some major electrical improvements and other pertinent work that kind of goes with it, but these are kind of the big picture items. This is just an example photo of the return activated sludge pumps, what it may look like when replacing them. So again, we're looking at $9 million total. Like I said, that may come down a little bit as we move projects in and out of the water development funds. But that's what we're kind of looking at there. Are there any questions on those projects?
On that grit removal project, that I'm assuming we have the space there to add all those components?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Comments, questions? Staff, board?
You say no?
It's tight, yeah.
It's tight.
Yeah.
We build up.
Yeah, I might have to do a platform over the drive or something, but we'll figure out those details.
Staff?
When was the last time that we tried to pass a bond?
17.
17.
What was the margin of failure?
Wasn't it 47%?
It failed in 2017.
Right, like was it close or not close?
Wasn't that close?
Not that close?
Not that close.
Close by failure or success?
Failure.
60
One
plus,
side-
60 plus voted it down?
I can't remember the numbers exactly,
I
but
thought it was like a 47% again, or for, and the rest, like the majority was against. But between precincts, it won on the
40-60
island and it
maybe?
lost on in
That's what you
Port
said, like
Isabel.
40-60?
Yeah.
How did it do in Laguna Vista?
Well, Laguna Vista didn't have a polling station, so the only place to vote was in Port Isabel, and that's the area where it fell.
So we didn't necessarily pull the date on how LB Laguna Vista.
Yeah, the local election was happening at the same time, and to vote on both, they would have had to go into both places. So it was
But
just
you're saying from that polling station in Port Isabel, it didn't.
that's where it lost. Yeah.
And that was at a time when there was one group, well, never mind. Groups for us this past.
Was it a May or November election, do you know?
Was November.
Anybody? Ryan, do you know anything about elections, if May or November elections are better attended?
I don't know.
But
November or
I
better
think we didn't
too.
have enough time to promote, and advocate, or move forward, educate the public on the needs.
That's why you feel it failed?
We didn't have enough time.
Was there a bond planning committee? Or no?
No.
It was rushed.
There was no bond planning committee also?
Eddie, and I think you need to start putting together a list of FAQs, frequently asked questions. All right, so devil's advocate, I've got $100,000 property, how much are my taxes going to go up?
It would be about $70.
Approximately.
Yeah, about 70. Mhm.
About $40 a year, right?
Mhm.
You know, you did a graph last night, and you broke it down to values of houses on the island, houses in Port Isabel, houses, that's way too complicated. You
Mhm.
need to do it
Just
by
buy
$100,000
Mhm.
increments.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it real, the simpler you can make it, the easier it'll be to understand.
Mhm.
But that's gonna be the first question people are gonna ask, how much are my taxes gonna go up? And the first answer, part of that answer should be that you know, unlike other taxing entities in this area, for the last few years, your taxes have actually gone down. But to carry forward in this community for the next 20 years, we feel it important to make this investment at this time, and your taxes are probably going to go up $40 per year for $100,000 valuation.
Here's another question, since our PR guy is here, that I'd throw up there. What do you mean we're trying to get a bond passed? We just, every time I look at my bill, it's going up. In fact, it's 2020, and I just saw it went up again compared to 2019. Why do we need to pass a bond as well? That would just be, I would imagine that's a question that we would get pretty serious.
But part of
Yeah.
that answer again is,
Yeah, same
for the
answer.
water districts, your taxes have actually gone down in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
You've got to let people know that.
Yeah, but
The short answer would be that the revenue is paying for some projects, and the taxes are paying for other projects, so that's the short answer.
Yeah, I
Right,
mean,
which just went over 80% of people's heads. What do you mean we have revenue and tax? They're not all the same. I mean, like, we have to be pretty, we have to some good talking points, which is why we got everybody together.
If I may, Brian, I have a question for you. Legally, I know we're not permitted to, you know, advocate or speak against said bond, but what about a form that we can create for an information stream or education to exist within our website? You know, can we create an FAQ system where answers are provided? Can we just give them information links to access to where?
It might depend on how it's done,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what it says.
Mhm.
You know, if it's if it's seen as like campaigning for it.
Of course.
I mean, it just kind of depends on how.
Yeah, you have to be delicate with that.
If you're talking about facts, but you know.
Can't be
if
based
you're-
on opinion, yeah.
If you're, you know, choosing your facts carefully and making it completely slanted, you know, that's one way to campaign. You
I
know,
mean,
so
at
you
least
gotta be careful.
list scope of work,
Right, just
list what Mr. Houston's talking about, per $100,000 it goes up X amount. Like, these are facts that you could list
try
to help them better make,
try not to make it arguably, you know.
Has to be neutral.
yeah, neutral.
And then we did talk to our bond counsel this morning
Mhm,
about that, and
mhm.
gave an update on the committee that we had meeting last night.
Mhm.
And we did talk about what the committee can do, what we can do. And we can promote the facts that are out there, like the needs, the cost, you know, like say that from 3.8 pennies, it's gonna go up to 8 pennies.
Mhm.
And we can talk about the rates also.
Mhm.
As long as they're facts and we're not utilizing water district resources,
Mhm.
then we can do just about all that.
Same
And
question, but in regards to our revenue scope of work, now we can fully discuss anything that falls under that umbrella, correct? You know, I mean, this is under our revenue, so we can educate the community on, you know, what we talked about in our last meeting about how, you know, we're encompassing these lift stations because we don't want to pay a long-term, you know, loan percentage and interest, you know, on something that may have to be recreated by the you know, time that loan expires or whatnot. And these other things that are a part of that, and strategies that this district has taken to, you know, to try to save as much money as possible and not increase their bills. I don't know, just information's always best when you can provide it legally, and that's why I asked that. And then to piggyback off what Scott said, I just want to reiterate our gratitude to you, Mr. Garcia, and the committee that you represent. You know, everybody's got things to do in this day and age, so for you to take as much time as you've taken to, you know, investigate this as much as you have with your experience and expertise, it's just, we're really grateful for your service and those that you represent here tonight. So thank you again on behalf of this board, you know, and this district. I think it's awesome, so appreciate it. And people like you is, you know, why something like this is even possible, I think, and I think it's, you know, a reflection of this board trying to do its due diligence to do this in a timely manner, not rush it at the last minute, educate as best as we can within our legal rights, and then, you know, kind of let God take care of the rest. So good job on all accounts. That's all I got. Thanks.
Let me give you another devil's advocate question. I live a block away from the water plant in Laguna Vista. Why do I care about the one here in Elizabeth?
Because if the water plant in Laguna Vista goes out, you're still out of water.
Is that your only answer?
That's,
That's the best.
it's a factual
Fact.
answer.
It's factual, but it's not enough.
Being out of water is not enough?
Well, no, what I'm saying is, no, you can point to historically, number one, you're bumping capacity in the summertime. The TCU2, at this point in time, has told us we should be in a
At
planning
capacity.
stage, correct?
Correct.
We also know that if water plant number one had to come online, it could not filter out the viruses and all this other stuff.
Bacteria.
And then you talk about that, that's where your resiliency, I guess, comes into play. And then redundancy, where if one plant goes down and one plant is available. So maybe think of 3 major points as an answer to that question, because that will probably be a big question.
Okay.
It's the biggest part of the bond issue, so the simpler you can make your answer, the easier it will be, I believe, for the public to understand.
Okay. It was a good one.
But basically, we convinced the island last time, so we gotta convince 20% more people in Port Isabel and Laguna Vista to vote. We gotta change two people's minds out of every 10.
And make sure Laguna Vista is a polling station.
Compared to last time, we have different numbers, different items on the agenda. There's a little more to it than just what was going on last time.
There's a lot of people coming to this area. You got
Made a
to.
point about water plant number one. I think the community of Port Isabel proper, I think they have a sentimental ownership of water plant number one. This was the first
The
plant,
original.
water plant that
Sure.
constructed here. And they have roots with it, growth with it, so it's a sentimental thing. So if you tell them that, look, water plant number one, which was built back in the 50s, it's going to get, rebuilt again, it'll be larger, the existing filtration system is outdated, the plant is outdated, you're going to get a whole new plant, new filtration system, better quality of water. And they want to say, okay, we're getting our plant back. It's going to be bigger and better and modern and all. And I think that hopefully will sway the Port Isabel. It's here in their neighborhood, in their backyard, is something that they built way back when, which was Cameron County first part of District One. And they have a sentimental look, hopefully.
No, I think you have a good thought there, yeah.
A insignificant question from an old ball coach. Who's in charge of painting the thing? Like, can we put home the tarpons on it or anything of that nature? Or I think that's what, I mean, when you drive through communities, you see the schools that community represents. I mean, I know we're far away from making that decision, but I'd be a proponent of honoring the school in that way if we could make that decision. But thanks again, Rudy. I think you just brought up another great point. You represent, part of this community that's been here a long time. And, your wisdom is valued, so thank you again. Are we shooting for the longest meeting ever, or?
No, are we wrapping this up, or
4 minutes
are we
late?
wrapped up on the workshop side?
I'm good.
I'll quit asking
Does
questions.
staff have any questions or comments? I know we have quite a few staff members here. Any comments or questions? Well,
Well, you ain't got nothing to say? Wow.
Get my own mic, all right?
Hey, it's not karaoke.
All right, so you don't get to sing then, okay?
that concludes that. Perhaps we can jump into the regular meeting. Take a break. You want to take a few minutes to recess and then resume? We'll end the workshop at 6:35 p.m. and we'll resume in 5 minutes with a regular agenda meeting.